Hey guys, tonight we're doing something very ambitious. And by ambitious, I mean deeply misleading. We're explaining the Cold War in 10 minutes, or at least that's what the title says. So get comfortable, dim the lights, let your phone slowly slip out of your hand, and accept that this will not, in any meaningful way, be 10 minutes. Take a breath, maybe another one. History is not in a hurry, and neither are we. Tonight's story is about fear. Institutional fear. Bureaucratic fear. The kind of fear where grown men in suits stare at maps and decide the best solution is more buttons. Bigger buttons. Buttons that end the world. Now, before we float gently into paranoia, let's set the mood. It's the mid-20th century. Everyone is tired. Everyone has just finished a world war that involved trenches, genocide, firebombing, and an uncomfortable amount of mustaches. People want peace. Naturally, this is the moment when the planet decides to split itself in half and glare at itself for 40 years. The Cold War doesn't start with a bang. It starts with awkward silence, like a dinner party where the guests help defeat a mutual enemy, but now no one knows who's bringing dessert and everyone suspects poison. On one side, you have capitalism, markets, advertising, the comforting illusion that you chose your toothpaste. On the other side, communism, collective ownership, 5-year plans, the comforting illusion that the state knows what it's doing. Neither side trusts the other. Both sides claim to be saving the world. Both sides are absolutely sure the other one is about to destroy it. And so begins the Cold War, a war without formal declarations, a war without direct fighting between the main characters, a war fought through spies, proxy conflicts, propaganda posters, and an almost erotic fascination with nuclear weapons. Now, let's talk about spies, because this is where things get fun in a very quiet, paperwork-heavy way. The CIA and the KGB are not suave movie characters at first. They are analysts. They are memo writers. They are people who ruin dinner by saying things like, "Statistically, this coup is very achievable." The CIA believes communism spreads like a virus. The KGB believes capitalism rots societies from the inside. So both agencies dedicate themselves to preventing the other side from doing literally anything. Elections? Suspicious. Student protests? Definitely suspicious. Someone reading the wrong book on a park bench? Probably a spy. And because no one wants to start World War III directly, everything becomes indirect. A chess game played with real countries, real people, and very unreal levels of confidence. This is how you get proxy wars. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Conflicts where the superpowers insist they are not fighting each other despite supplying weapons, money, advisors, and opinions no one asked for. It's like two people throwing rocks at each other using someone else's yard. But the real star of the Cold War isn't spies or soldiers, it's the bomb. Nuclear weapons become the emotional support animals of world leaders. The logic is simple and completely insane. If we both have enough nukes to destroy the planet several times over, then neither of us will ever use them. Because if you launch yours, I launch mine, and then there's no planet to argue over. This concept is called mutual assured destruction, which is somehow abbreviated as MAD. History occasionally has a sense of humor. Entire generations grow up knowing that at any moment, someone might press a button and end civilization. Schools teach children to duck under desks, as if a wooden desk will protect you from the sun becoming angry. Governments build bunkers. Generals draw circles on maps. Scientists argue about megatons like they're comparing wine vintages. And the public just lives with it. Watches sitcoms, goes to work, falls asleep every night under the gentle promise of instant vaporization. Let's drift over to propaganda, because everyone needs a hobby. The Cold War is a golden age of telling your own citizens how amazing you are and how terrifying the other side is. Movies, posters, cartoons, entire genres dedicated to the idea that the enemy is both weak and unstoppable at the same time. In America, communists are lurking everywhere. In the Soviet Union, capitalists are decadent, cruel, and obsessed with money. Both are sort of right in very different ways. Athletics become political, space becomes political, chess becomes political. At one point, even ballet is political, which is honestly impressive. And then there's space. Because when you're locked in an existential standoff, the natural thing to do is race into the void. The space race isn't about science, it's about vibes. Who looks smarter? Who looks stronger? Who can put a flag somewhere where no one lives? Every satellite is a flex, every launch is a statement, and every failure is deeply embarrassing. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the arms race continues. More bombs, smaller bombs, bigger bombs, bombs that could destroy cities, bombs that could destroy continents, bombs that could destroy everyone except the people who ordered them. At several points, the world comes alarmingly close to ending. Missiles in Cuba, false alarms, radar glitches, moments where one tired officer decides not to follow protocol, and humanity survives by vibes alone. These moments are not treated as lessons, they are treated as near misses, which is somehow worse. And yet, for all this tension, the Cold War is strangely stable, rigid, predictable, a system of fear so carefully balanced that everyone is terrified to upset it. Leaders come and go, ideologies soften and harden, walls go up, walls go down, but the core anxiety remains. The Cold War isn't loud, it hums. It's background noise, a permanent stress headache for the entire planet. By the time it begins to wind down, people almost don't know what to do without it. Decades of preparation for an apocalypse that never quite arrives. But we're not there yet. For now, we're still in the long middle, the slow burn, the endless staring contest between two systems convinced they are the final form of human organization. So, take another breath, let your shoulders drop. The missiles are still in their silos, the spies are still writing reports no one fully reads, and the world keeps turning very carefully. In the next part, we'll drift deeper into the personalities, the leaders, the egos, the emotional support doctrines. For now, just rest here, floating gently through a war where nothing happens until it almost does. All right, welcome back. If you're still awake, that's fine. If you're half asleep and mildly confused, that's actually ideal. In this part, we gently drift away from abstract fear and into something much more unsettling: the people. Because the Cold War isn't just systems and ideologies, it's run by human beings with egos, human beings with grudges, human beings who believe history personally chose them. Let's start with the concept of doctrines, because nothing says calm bedtime story like policy frameworks named after men. A doctrine is just a fancy way of saying, this is how we justify what we were already planning to do. The United States develops a habit of announcing doctrines whenever it feels morally inconvenienced. The basic idea is containment. Communism must not spread. Not because it's always actively invading, but because the idea might catch on, which is treated like a rash. So America promises to support anyone, anywhere, as long as they're not communist. Dictators? Fine. Corrupt regimes? Also fine. As long as they hate communism, they're suddenly very complicated allies. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, has its own logic. They were invaded multiple times in living memory. They lost millions of people. They do not trust anyone at all. So they want buffer states, friendly governments, borders padded with loyalty. This is framed as defense. Everyone else calls it expansion.
Both sides insist they are reacting, not acting, which is a comforting story they tell themselves while stockpiling weapons. Now let's gently slide into the leaders themselves, not with sharp details, just vibes. American presidents during the Cold War tend to project calm authority, a reassuring smile, a firm handshake, a quiet confidence that suggests someone else is handling the really scary stuff. Behind the scenes, they are constantly being briefed on scenarios that end with phrases like acceptable losses and limited exchange, which are deeply unsettling combinations of words. Soviet leaders, meanwhile, have their own logic. They project seriousness, gravity, a sense that history is heavy and they are carrying it personally. Smiling is optional, paranoia is not. And both sides watch each other obsessively. Speeches are analyzed, gestures are decoded. A cough at a podium becomes a strategic signal. This is where intelligence agencies really earn their coffee. Spies are everywhere, or at least everyone assumes they are. Embassies become rumor factories. Cultural exchanges double as reconnaissance missions. A pianist tours abroad. Is he a pianist or is he a pianist and something else? No one knows, which is the point. And sometimes spies are incredibly mundane. They photocopy documents, they attend meetings, they pass along information that may or may not matter. Other times, they are disastrously dramatic. Double agents, defectors, people disappearing quietly into new identities. Most of the time, intelligence work is boring, which makes the mistakes more terrifying. Because when intelligence is wrong, decisions still get made. Missiles don't care if your data was misfiled. Let's float gently over to fear again, because it never really leaves. In the 1950s and 60s, fear becomes structured, organized, funded. Civil defense drills teach citizens how to survive nuclear war in ways that are technically instructions, but emotionally suggestions. Build a shelter, stock supplies, remain calm. Remain calm is doing a lot of work there. Movies imagine invasions. Radio broadcasts imagine emergencies. Everyone imagines worst-case scenarios constantly. Children grow up practicing for the end of the world as a routine inconvenience, like fire drills, except the fire is everywhere. And yet daily life continues. People fall in love. People complain about work. People plan futures that may or may not exist. This coexistence of normalcy and apocalypse is one of the strangest features of the Cold War. Human adaptability is impressive and deeply concerning. Now let's talk about alliances, because nothing says trust like military paperwork. On one side, NATO. On the other, the Warsaw Pact. Two massive groups of countries promising to defend each other just in case things go very badly, very fast. These alliances create lines, clear, rigid lines, and lines are comforting until someone steps over them. Europe becomes the main stage. Split cities, split countries, split families. One side promises prosperity, the other promises stability. Both promise safety. All three are selectively true. And then there's Berlin. Always Berlin, a city carved up like a very tense cake, surrounded, monitored, symbolized to death. When a wall goes up, it is described as protection, which is historically a red flag. Walls do not exist because everyone is happy. Meanwhile, technological competition accelerates. Missiles get faster, planes get higher, submarines get quieter. Quiet is important, especially underwater, especially carrying nuclear weapons. At any given moment, somewhere in the ocean, someone is waiting, listening, hoping nothing happens. The Cold War is full of these quiet waiting moments, people sitting in rooms, watching screens, interpreting blips. Sometimes the blips are wrong. Sometimes someone decides to double-check. Sometimes the world survives because one person feels uneasy about ending it. This is not a comforting system. It just happens to work. Now let's ease into ideology fatigue because it sets in quickly. By the later decades, fewer people are genuinely passionate about the original ideals. Communism becomes bureaucracy. Capitalism becomes marketing. The grand visions flatten into routines. The slogans lose meaning. The fear remains, but it's more habitual. Leaders still talk about existential threats. Citizens still nod along. But beneath it, there's exhaustion. People are tired of being afraid, tired of drills, tired of pretending this is sustainable. And cracks begin to show. Economic strain, political unrest, whispers of reform. The Cold War doesn't end in a single moment. It loosens, it frays. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, we're still in the long, strange middle, a world balanced on doctrines, misunderstandings, and mutual terror. So let your breathing slow. Let the hum of history fade into the background again. The men with buttons are still arguing, the spies are still filing reports, and the planet is still, somehow, intact. In the next part, we'll drift toward the unraveling, the moments when the tension softens, when certainty gives way to confusion. But not yet. For now, just rest. The Cold War isn't going anywhere.
All right. Welcome to the end, or at least the gentle unwinding. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've emotionally survived the Cold War, which is more than can be said for several economic systems and a surprising number of concrete walls. So let's ease into the final phase. No explosions, no dramatic countdown timers, just confusion, paperwork, and a lot of people quietly realizing they're tired. By the late 1970s and 80s, the Cold War has been running for decades. That's a long time to stay terrified without results. Fear ages badly. It turns stale, like a joke repeated too many times, except the joke is global annihilation. On the American side, the confidence is still there, but it's brittle. There's money, there's media, there's an overwhelming belief that things are basically working, but also a creeping sense that no one is really sure why this has to continue exactly like this. On the Soviet side, the situation is heavier. The system is grinding, the economy is strained, the bureaucracy is vast and tired and allergic to change. The ideology that once promised a bold new future now mostly promises forms. So many forms. And this is where something dangerous happens in geopolitics. Someone reasonable shows up. Not exciting, not traumatic, just tired enough to try something else. Instead of shouting louder, there are talks. Instead of escalation, there are negotiations. Instead of pretending the other side is cartoonishly evil, there's cautious acknowledgement that they, too, are people who would prefer not to die in a fireball. Arms reduction agreements appear, which is wild considering how emotionally attached everyone had become to their missiles. Missiles are dismantled. Warheads are counted. Trust is tested, verified, argued over. This is not heroic. It's slow, boring, and deeply effective. Meanwhile, inside the Soviet sphere, pressure builds. People want things, normal things, consumer goods, mobility, a future that doesn't feel pre-decided. Reforms are introduced with the cautious optimism of someone loosening a jar they're not sure is pressurized. Turns out, it is. Once people realize the world might not instantly end if they speak openly, they speak openly. A lot. Borders soften, restrictions loosen, control slips. And then, one night, a wall that defined an era is suddenly optional. No grand battle, no master plan, just confusion, crowds, and guards who don't feel like shooting anyone. History sometimes ends not with a bang, but with a shrug. Within a few short years, the structure that held the Cold War together collapses under its own weight. The Soviet Union dissolves, flags change, maps are redrawn, and the world looks around, slightly disoriented. That's it? That's how it ends? Yes. After decades of existential dread, it ends with press conferences and economic transitions that are rough, honestly. There's no victory parade for surviving nuclear standoffs you never technically fought, just a quiet relief and a lot of unresolved consequences. Because here's the thing, the Cold War doesn't vanish. It echoes. Weapons remain, alliances remain, suspicion remains. Entire institutions were built around the assumption of permanent tension. They don't just disappear. They look for new purposes. Old habits die hard, especially ones funded at scale. The fear shifts, the language changes, but the muscle memory stays. And maybe that's the real ending. Not triumph, not failure, just adaptation. The Cold War taught humanity that it could survive living on the edge of extinction, which is both impressive and unsettling. We didn't solve the problem. We learned to coexist with it. So, as we gently drift out of this long, misleadingly titled explanation, let's sit with that. A war that was never formally declared, never directly fought between its main players, and never truly resolved. Just set aside. Like a loaded weapon placed carefully on a shelf. Still there, still real, but for now, untouched. And that's where we'll leave it. The lights are low, the maps are quiet, the buttons remain unpressed. History exhales. So can you.